just
Go.
on the roof. And
Hello guys, so we are in the London CCD class at the moment, 2019 and October. So we were talking about EIGRP design, and it's in the financial network in real life. One of our engineers here will explain how they are using EIGRP, how they have been using EIGRP. They had all designed, they redesigned their network, and little bit based on the requirements, of course, little bit, I would say, densely meshed network. And as most of those financial environments, the biggest requirement is latency. By taking latency into an account in their network, how they are using EIGRP, this will be a very unique video in my opinion. So Ramiro, can you explain what we have, what are you doing, and it will be proactive conversation.
Yeah, so in financial networks we have a lot of connectivity in co-location, which a co-location basically is a data center where you have, for example, this is a data center in London where you have connectivity to exchanges and clients in the same co-location, and then because you want to reduce latency as much as possible, you have either 1 or 2 layers of switches. You never have 3 because that's latency, and these switches most likely are going to be the fastest switches in the network. So this is common to have possibly, for example, an exchange here. You may have an exchange which is an external connectivity to you, and then you may have also clients and providers connecting to your switches. You want to switch as fast as possible here. In this particular design, we have the EIGRP here, which is fine, but then some clients may want to trade, say for example, from London to Johannesburg, which in those cases, these companies use low latency connectivity, which is point-to-point links in the fastest paths possible according to the fiber optics and cable systems of the world. So you may have connectivity, for example, from London to Paris, and then in Paris you have a similar network, which is like that one. I'm just going to put the WAN switches there, and maybe you also have connectivity from different places. So I'm drawing here Frankfurt, and then over here is Milan, and maybe you have Zurich. And the reason you have all these links is because you want to get to the data centers as fast as possible in terms of latency, because you have the two layer design. You don't have dedicated WAN links, so all of these are switches switching as fast as you can. So you may have connectivity, international connectivity, for example, to Singapore, this is the Asia region, and maybe you have to Johannesburg as well. You may end up having a connection like that, and another one having like this, and maybe from Frankfurt going to Tokyo, and so on and so on. So you end up with a lot of low latency links across your different co-locations, and in all of this you have clients and providers sending data or trading in the co-location, but also trading across different regions. So in a particular case, because we have EIGRP here, and this was a big EIGRP table, when we had, say for example, a flap here between Singapore and Johannesburg, that link flap, because the EIGRP queries go not only inside the data center of each of the sites, but they also move across to the other regions. Then basically the situation that we had is, just by losing that circuit, you see queries coming all over the place to London and all the regions across the world. So that convergence took ages, because all of these had to respond and send back the queries to these neighbors, and they had to be waiting. So we had cases where maybe that switch, which is an axis switch, was very slow, and it was just delaying absolutely everything. So one of the ways we improve this is by using or putting these leaf switches as stop. So maybe when the query came to the WAN switches, because they were stopped, it was never sent that way. So that reduced the latency in some situations, especially in international links. Reduced the convergence from 11 seconds to 2.
Let me just stop here. The conversation started. I asked Ramiro to put the drawings because he gave some numerical values like 11 seconds to 2 seconds by enabling EIGRP Stub, reducing the convergence time. So numerical value was there, and I was interested to hear and thought that it's also useful for the audience. So by using EIGRP Stub feature in this two-tier leaf and spine architecture at the lift switch by enabling EIGRP Stub, how they would reduce from 11 to 2 seconds convergence time. But of course, now we are talking overall their financial network design, although we explained EIGRP Stub how it helped to them. This is financial network requirement is latency, low latency. Their customers competing with the latency really, especially if you heard high frequency trading HFT environment. So tick to trade latency is very critical for the companies. They are racing with the time. So by the time, so here you were talking about your client as well as exchange, stock exchange connectivity. I think you were using BGP. Can you draw that one as well, and let's fit all things together?
Of course. So the way this whole network connected to external providers and clients was by BGP. Obviously, this is only the internal routing. So basically, the whole network was seen as a big BGP AS. Yeah. So, for example, in this case, we have a provider and a client. So these are seen maybe as AS10, just to say something. So the way we basically connected maybe with an exchange here in Johannesburg, which is also seeing us as a single AS, is pretty much BGP the way you configure it with most of clients and providers anyway. So basically, the way we were using this is we had a massive AS IBGP connectivity. So EIGRP just was used to find the next hop of BGP. So maybe you were learning the prefixes from them, but then the next hop was resolved by EIGRP.
You are using, I think, lift switches to connect to the clients and
yes.
Your BGP peers. So you said single AS here, so single autonomous system. They are doing IBGP, which means the question between these, let's say, endpoints, do you have full mesh IBGP or do you have route reflector somewhere in your network?
So yes, we use a series of route reflectors that was regional. So as you say, this is what you say is correct. It's not connected directly to the one switch. So I just simplify there. It's connected to an axis. And then this was route reflector of that AS, but we also had route reflectors of the region. Maybe Johannesburg was one, but maybe you have London route reflectors, which also reflected prefixes from the region. So yeah, you have a lot of route reflectors.
So you have hierarchical route reflector design, it seems.
Yes.
So an EIGRP, BGP to EIGRP redistribution, you are handling it?
Yeah, there was redistribution, but that created a lot of problems. So what we ended up doing was pretty much more like an ISP, which the IGP was used to find the next hop of BGP, of IBGP, instead of redistributing and then redistributing back.
At the moment, you are not talking anything about MPLS here. It seems you don't have MPLS.
No.
Okay, why you don't have MPLS? What do you think about it?
There's many reasons why we didn't go for MPLS, and I think generally in low latency MPLS is not used. One is you have to have an extra layer of connectivity, say the CE to P, you always have to have it, which is an additional point of switching. In low latency networks, you want to reduce the number of switches as much as you can. So adding an extra layer is significant. The other one is the fastest switches in the market for Cisco or Arista or other vendors are switches, not routers. For example, the 3548 in Cisco, which switches at 250 nanoseconds or 190 nanoseconds, or the Arista switches, all of them should switch in about less than
Arista 7,000, 8,000, something like that was used in financial environment.
The 7150 has been there for ages, and it switches 380 nanoseconds.
Okay.
So generally you want to switch in 500 nanoseconds or less.
We are not talking here micro-milliseconds, nanoseconds.
Yeah.
Okay.
So one of the reasons is that extra layer. The other reason is basically MPLS is tunneling, and here we want to switch IP as soon as possible. That's the reason, for example, in financial markets, you never see encryption, because encryption will slow things down. And in any case, things like market data are very important, but a second later become useless. So you need to know the information right away. So all these mechanisms that somehow can slow you down are not deployed in low latency.
So we were talking EIGRP, and though little bit BGP we talked and some fast switch, especially in this high financial market environment, he gave some example with the numerical values again. EIGRP point of view, Stub, you said, anything special, anything else special for EIGRP, do you remember?
Yeah, so the enhancements we did with the legacy network was using Stub, and that helped everywhere because it's a flat EIGRP network. The other thing that we play with is the metrics of EIGRP, calculating. So we had delay statically set in all these ones to make primary paths and secondary paths. So what I started looking at is, for example, if that traffic from London to Frankfurt, which is quite important, the secondary should go maybe through Paris. I was starting to look at the EIGRP formula to make sure that I could change the delay here. All of them had delay manually set so that we can make it prefer over the other ones. That's the way we kind of told EIGRP which are the fastest paths by manipulating the metric. So what I started doing is making sure that we had the most number of feasible successors to go to the other regions. So for example, if this is the primary path and secondary is through Paris, then I started moving the EIGRP numbers so that this was a feasible successor this way without messing with the overall routing, because maybe I could put a metric here, but then that would break this other connectivity here. So you have to be a bit careful. What we end up doing is just doing the formula of EIGRP calculation, having kind of a theory how that thing's going to work. And then at the weekend, maybe we took the routing table of all these routers, we implemented the new numbers, and then had another look at the routing table, see how much that changed, and if we were breaking things or fixing things, and then that's how we end up having more feasible successors. So that could also help with the convergence of the network.
So you say then, we have, for example, between London and Frankfurt, they have direct connectivity, but as well as they have alternate paths. So primary path, let's say direct connectivity, but for the alternate path, since it seems the convergence is important as well, not only latency, what you do is you make sure that you have feasible successors. So as you might know, with the EIGRP, when you have feasible successor, you don't have to send the query again, wait for the query reply, etc. So convergence point of view, also you don't have to run dual algorithm to find the backup path because it's already calculated, pre-installed in the topology table. So that's why when it fails, so it's just a matter of failure detection. So you can run BFT for fast failure detection, bidirectional forwarding detection. So then you need to carry, of course, prefixes from the topology table to the routing and forwarding table. It can take time based on the number of prefixes. So, but you are manipulating the path with delay attribute, he said. So EIGRP without name modes, 5K values and K1, K3, bandwidth and delay. And we always say in design, EIGRP design, use delay because cumulative delay. So by just a little bit changing delay, you probably putting this one as the feasible successor without affecting other paths.
Yeah.
If you will do with bandwidth, you will end up messing up almost everything. Plus bandwidth might be tied with the quality of service, RSVP, reservation, etc. That's why we use delay when we do EIGRP traffic engineering with the metric manipulation. So we mentioned the EIGRP Stub then. Also for the EIGRP metric manipulation you talked about. Anything else for the EIGRP? Because after EIGRP, little bit I want to talk about maybe if you have multicast in this network.
Which we have a lot.
A lot. So this is financial environment. So then we can also touch that. And if the audience like this kind of discussion, I can bring them thousands of them. So real life discussion with network engineers. By the way, these guys all are CCIEs and doing design. That's why they're in the CCD class. Please continue. If you have EIGRP any trick, let's continue. Otherwise, what do you do for the multicast?
So the multicast is a bit crazy here because, as you know, most of the markets are pushed by multicast. So you end up with a multicast table that is massive here, massive hundreds and hundreds of SCOMEGs, StarCOMEGs, thousands sometimes when the market opens on Monday mornings. One of the most challenging things is that, for example, if you are getting a market from Frankfurt, for example, Deutsche Bank, something, and then you want to get your data all in London, then maybe it's easy, yeah. But most financial institutions will send you 2 market data feeds. So because it's so critical, the end-up systems will consume the 2 market data feeds, and if something happens to market data feed A, they will switch immediately to market data feed B. Live, all the time. And they actually will measure the latency and see how much that goes away. So if, for example, from Frankfurt, we receive market data from a specific market and then you push it to London, you don't want to push both feeds over the same link. So we end up doing a little bit of traffic engineering, well, not a little bit, a lot of traffic engineering to make sure that feed A came maybe the fastest way and feed B through different switches and different WAN links, so that if that link dies, then you switch, your end system switch to feed B immediately, because this happens faster than network detection. So the end-up systems that are taking the market data and doing tick-to-trade and things like that will immediately sense that it's not there and will switch immediately to feed B. So there's not even a point to trying to reconverge as fast as possible. What you want to do is have alternate paths. So in EIGRP there was not a lot of options, but I think there's more options than OSPF. So we end up doing very crazy things with the offset lists, making sure that the feed B was going to go that way, and then a little bit of static M routes as well to make sure that the traffic was so that we didn't have our RPF checks failures. That's the most challenging thing in market data in multicast here, but again, it's because EIGRP is not supposed to be a lot of traffic engineering.
You don't have MPLS, so you have IP network, you have PIM instances here. Which PIM models you deploy here?
PIM sparse mode, ASM.
ASM, many source multicast there. Then you have so much StarCOMEGs and those groups you are using for your clients, it seems, right?
Yes.
Can you explain a little bit ASM here, the design of ASM?
Well, there's all sorts of situations. There are situations where PIM sparse mode ASM is pretty much the only one you use nowadays in financial markets. But for example, in some cases we had or PIM RPs inside the network, but most commonly is like a provider. The RP is over there inside that. So what you do is basically you put the PIM here for the rest of the network. You point your RP this way, but if, for example, someone here wants to receive the market data or the multicast from them, and then the switchover happens, then they need to get a route all the way down there, which we didn't have the route. So the way we solved it is by setting the SPT threshold instead of normal, which is 0, to infinity. So the market data will always go and get that host instead of the RP, which is inside the exchange.
When you put the infinity, you are not doing SPT switchover then.
Exactly.
So by the way, SPT switchover, so you know, but for the audience, maybe someone don't know, let me remind otherwise. From the ASM, any source multicast, we have RP, runners point. So RP is used initially, and when the receiver receives the multicast traffic, they will learn the source unicast IP address, and shortest path tree or source base tree will be triggered and normally before short spread tree, you used to receive the traffic over shared tree. So shared tree source-based tree switchover, we call it SPT switchover, and they don't want to do this. Just here explain the reason. So we talked a little bit about multicast and EIGRP and external connectivity, which is BGP. I think just before this, I was talking with you on actual latency. So real life propagation delay, propagation latency, very critical for this network. Fiber route mile we are talking about here. It's very critical, but their delay assignment is static anyway. So how you are, or are you taking actual data plane physical latency into an account and reflecting into your short spread calculation?
With the legacy network, there was not a lot of things that you can do to reflect the real latency into the design, because you only play with the delay of the circuits, and then maybe if you put 1,000 or you put 10 or you put, as long as it's relevant to the rest of the network, then you play with that. But it doesn't tell you exactly where the latency
Where
is.
actual latency is.
It's
Because
just
of propagation delay. By the way, propagation delay, distance between the physical location and every 1,000 kilometer at 5 millisecond latency, because of speed of light, every 1,000 mile 8 millisecond latency. So they are playing right now with it. So they are, I think right now you are reflecting actual physical latency to the pet selection. So I want to listen that one as well.
I can tell you how we redesigned this.
Okay.
Which the way we redesigned this is by using BGP and using a big confederation so that we could preserve the single AS towards clients and providers. So each data center was going to be a confederation AS.
EIGRP will go away?
It will go
away? So no EIGRP anymore?
It will go no EIGRP in the long run, but there's a migration process. But it's going to be only routed by BGP. So we ended up having a confederation sub-AS in each of the data centers. And there's one good trick about confederation BGP, which is MED is transitive among the sub-ASs. So what we end up doing is playing with MED. So we put here, for example, so if this circuit was 136 milliseconds, what we end up doing is in MED adding 136,000 as a MED calculation. And then the other trick that we use is instead of setting the MED, we use in Cisco and Arista you can do a plus.
Okay.
So for example, if in Tokyo you had another 43 milliseconds, you put this to this link 43,000 with a plus. So this guy was able to calculate to Hong Kong because he received the metric accumulated across the two links, which in normal BGP you cannot do it because the MED is not transitive.
Yes.
So that's a very good trick of confederation.
One question.
BGP.
There is a BGP feature though we discussed today in the class before EIGRP BGP Confederation. There is a BGP right now feature called AIGP.
Yes.
Did you consider that? Did you check that?
No, we didn't consider it. I don't think it was implemented. We didn't struggle with the plus. We just want to make sure that some legacy switches as well as the newer switches have the plus.
This plus feature, can you explain it again?
So if for example you receive that prefix from here to Tokyo, this is Hong Kong, this is Tokyo, you receive it in Tokyo. And if you set MED to 136,000, this guy will receive all the prefixes that you send 136. But the plus will say, whatever I already have, add 136 and send it out. You can do it the other way as well. So you receive whatever you are sending plus the metric.
You receive whatever you are receiving from here plus.
It doesn't wipe out, so it just adds to it.
It's like an additive community.
Additive.
Yeah.
It's like an additive thing.
How did you measure this 136 milliseconds?
Because this is so critical. Once in low latency, when you contract this circuit, you have an SLA. So this circuit maybe cost you, a normal circuit will cost you maybe $5,000. Low latency would cost you triple that, but they some sort of guarantee that they will give you 136 milliseconds, no more than that. That's the first thing that you have. So you have a guarantee that how it's going to do. Then you have things like Corville, which measure low latency. You have a Corville here and a Corville here, and I'm measuring constantly.
Latency measurement.
It is instrumental, yes. So it's instrumental. There's many ways to instrument this, but you want to make sure that you stay under that, because if that latency suddenly goes to 3,000 milliseconds, I don't know, 300
But it will not be
milliseconds.
dynamically reflected here, right?
Won't
If it
dynamic-
goes to 150 milliseconds, your MED still
Yes.
136,000. anyway.
Exactly. But that should not happen a lot of time. If this is changing latency, you better take it out.
Maybe you could automate this process anyway. So if this latency change, let me reflect
Yeah.
this change automatically to the configuration, etc.
You can, especially in international links, sometimes they do protected links, the carriers. So if some region, for example, I don't know, here is Frankfurt, so maybe this is Russia in the middle of these two circuits. There's a break of the circuit, then it will take your reroute. The carrier, you don't know that happens, so that suddenly goes up. If it's a little bit up, it's not too bad. But if it suddenly goes very up, very high, it's better for you to know and take it out, because some trading may be happening across this link, and it's just better to take it out. Or especially if it's going up and down, up and down, up and down, the trading system just get crazy.
Couple things here. With the MED normally, without this plus feature, you couldn't add this extra additive. Okay?
Yeah.
That's why, as far as I know, AIGP came into the picture. Across AS boundary, AIGP accumulated IGP metric. So IGP metric can be placed with the AIGP.
Yes.
And I knew the case for the seamless MPLS network. So when you basically run IGP with a different domain across all your networking towards the access network as well. So, and there AIGP was one of those cases in mobile networks. I am hearing some discussion now, and I heard also this confederation. So with this additive feature, maybe you can look at AIGP.
Yeah, maybe, yes. I no longer work there, but yes. But this worked very well, and not only because of that. We need, as I told you, we need to do some traffic engineering here. So this way, if you configure the correct latencies that are mapped to the MED all over the place, you will route by the fastest path. You don't need to do anything more than that.
See what's happening here? MED is reflecting the actual physical latency,
Yeah.
and based on this MED value between the sub-ASs, they remove EIGRP between the sub-ASs, they are doing path manipulation. Yeah,
Exactly.
this is very unique cases, guys, what we are talking here. We started with the EIGRP Stub discussion in real life, how we had for the numerical value and ended up confederation, sub-AS usage, different countries, worldwide network, and how between those countries, by the way, these are international links and long haul links, they are expensive stuff. 136 milliseconds mean thousands of kilometers, okay? So expensive link, and how they are reflecting actual latency value, real life latency value, delay latency, to the MED attribute, and then doing the traffic engineering with it. Actually clever way. This plus feature was also interesting here to hear it. And we also told that probably this could be designed with the AIGP, accumulated IGP, and all this design, by the way, just a couple years old, and we are in 2019. Okay, not 5-10 years old stuff we are talking about. So it was, I think, nice discussion. Anything you want to add here?
Yes.
Okay.
So there's another very good trick that Confederation helped us here, because this is like a service provider, as you can see. So we present to clients and providers as a single AS. Confederation BGP allowed them to do it like that instead of faking an AS or something like that. The other thing that is very cool about confederations is that, for example, in this case, London to Johannesburg, maybe you have two paths, one that is direct and another one that is through Singapore, which doesn't make sense. But anyway, this is just what if you use normal BGP and you put the MEDs all over the place? You will never use that link because AS path goes before MED. But in reality, those two links may be faster than this link. Yeah.
Latency-wise, yes.
Latency-wise. So these two together should be potentially are faster than this one. So the other thing about Confederation BGP is that you don't account into that if you're sending traffic from that to that if you go through 2 or 3 different sub-ASs, because the AS path accounts the external connectivity, not the internal one. So the traffic could be allowed.
Very important here. In Confederation, AS path length here in the Confederation will not be considered for the path selection.
Yes.
AS path attribute, so AS numbers there is used for loop prevention.
Yes.
Okay, it's very important what he says. So you ended up using both, or what you are?
The fastest. So the fastest. So for example, just for we may end up having maybe 120,000, but maybe this is 100, and this is 110, for example. Just 110,000, yeah. So maybe in that situation, this is fastest, and this is slower. It doesn't have to be like that, but that rule of having an extra AS doesn't break things in terms of latency, which is what we wanted. Because that may be fastest. It doesn't have to be. Maybe that one's fastest, but it doesn't matter. We didn't want to take decisions based on the number of hops that you take. We want to take decisions based on how fast you can get to the other side of the network, no matter if it's one circuit or you go across.
What you are seeing again, these values, these latency values, are reflected to MED again.
Yeah.
Okay. Here, the highest value is 110.
No, it's 10 plus 100.
100. So
110.
total is 110. Here, although it is direct link 120, cumulative total delay here is still better than this one. So total metric with the MED is here shorter, as you know, for the best path selection. Shorter the MED, it will win. So that's why this path will be used. Okay. And what we said, although here, since Singapore, this one also has sub-AS, its own Confederation sub-AS, although over here 2 AS path length, or over here single, it will not be considered because AS path length in the Confederation will not be considered for the best path selection, but MED will be. That's why they are able to do that, he's trying to say, I think.
Exactly.
Excellent. So one question from me, then if you have also tricks, you can continue. By the way, I think it's long video, I don't know. Hopefully the viewers are enjoying as well. But you said, of course, latency is important in this financial network. You said we are carefully choosing the physical capacity as well, physical distance, and I'm sure you are using some submarine cable system as well. I know some submarine cable system very expensive, but they provide over the same route, like UK to United States links. There's Hibernia and so on and so forth. Expensive. Are you using those even expensive?
Yes, and they become very expensive. And sometimes providers will give you 2, 3, 4 different tiers of a price. So they may give you, for example, London to New York, 65 milliseconds. But if you pay more, they will give you 64. And it's the same cable system. They just have coiled fiber optics, so that they can sell different prices to different. So if you want to go the fastest possible, they will put another $10,000 on top of that.
So, but you are okay even for 1 millisecond. You are okay to pay extra. Right?
Basically,
1 millisecond. Even I am saying, but it's too much for financial network. Right?
Basically, in design, what we have to do is go to the business and say, is 1 millisecond going to help you make enough money so that we can pay $10,000 more a month for this provider for 1 millisecond? And they should make some calculations and say, yes, go for it, because 1 millisecond will make me more money than what you're spending there. Okay. This is a business decision.
Okay. So if we summarize, we talked about the EIGRP Stub, we talked about multicast, we talked about general EIGRP path manipulation. We talked about Multicast, I think. Then we talked about how they migrated from EIGRP by removing complete EIGRP to Confederation. They were anyway using external connectivity with the clients and exchanges, stock exchanges, BGP, and now they are using Confederation and different countries, different sub-ASs, and how it had basically, how they are doing with the MED transitive in the Confederation with the additive MED, how they are doing traffic engineering by reflecting actual physical latency to the MED and then doing the traffic engineering with that. And we also talked about ASPET attribute will not be used to pet selection, but it's used for the loop avoidance. And but MED here, although number of ASs is over this pet, maybe low more, but overall MED is shorter. That's why they are able to use this one. MED is just the attribute here in the Confederation they are using for the traffic engineering, simple. If I forget anything, like we talked about the overall latency requirements and paying even more for the cables, but the first priority is latency here. And I think it was a nice talk. If you like this kind of talk, just like the video, subscribe, and put the comments as well, so we can share more and more videos from the everywhere where I'm going. I can share lots of real life stories with you.